I I try not to get into polemical. I wanted to keep this channel a blog about the faith, and I'm trying to steer clear of polemical and political issues and so far on. And because I don't want to be bringing people down and criticizing and so forth. But I was watching Taylor Marshall's video yesterday that he did on the Institute of Christ the King, and why he thinks there's been a no announcement about what Father Z had put up on his blog last week. And I'm there thinking to myself, he's thinking, oh, maybe it's something to do with what the Pope has said about the media today. And I don't think Taylor understands what is going on in the church. I don't think Taylor understood why that document, Traditiones Custodes, was issued last year. Because whether he likes it or not, he has a major part to play in the reason why they came down so hard and so drastic on traditional Latin Mass communities. I do happen to have a few contacts in Rome. I did live there for a number of years. Was former Legionary of Christ. There are bishops and cardinals. Not that I'm saying that these bishops and cardinals in the Vatican are my contacts, but I just happen to know people. I happen to know lay workers and people, Jesuits that work in the Vatican. My contacts. And the odd time I'll have a conversation onto them, about what's going on. And I did ask, what, like, this document seems very strange to be issued. What's going on with Traditionis? Like, why issue that document? And the reason that document was drafted and issued and came down so hard is because of American traditionalists. It was a response to what went on in America. And it's a response actually to two people. To Vigano, Taylor Marshall, and you could add in two or three more people onto that. If you think this document was issued mid last year, after a very fraught presidential election. And to any Americans that are listening here, I'm not here criticizing Taylor Marshall or Vigano or American traditionalists. If I was American, I would, vote for the candidate that most supported Catholic values. And I think people know where I stand on that. But I'm just saying, Catholicism is bigger than America. It's bigger than traditional America. And the traditional movement is bigger than American traditional movement. So when you had Donald Trump retweeting Taylor Marshall, when you had Donald Trump retweeting Vigano, that didn't go unnoticed in Rome. It didn't go unnoticed. This was the end of, during the pandemic year, it was the end of 2020. That was, the crazy year. It was beyond crazy. So in 2021, last year, Rome was digesting everything that had gone on in the traditional movement. And Taylor Marshall, in all his videos, he tied the traditional movement to Trump. It's not just that he was supporting Trump. He had a video on, Melania Trump, is she Catholic? And they were almost canonizing the woman. Okay. I'm just saying, you got your voice out there. You were heard in Rome. Taylor Marshall was heard in Rome, and so was Vigano. And it all tied back to traditional movement. It all tied back. He did great work in giving the traditional movement PR, but he put us all in the same boat then. And remember that there are lots of traditional Catholics outside America. We face different political situations in different countries. And it's not all about America. It's not all, Trump played to his base. He needs a base. And he played to his base. And that's simply it. And again, please, if you're American, please don't think I'm here criticizing you. I'm just saying why that document was issued, the way it was issued, and the time it was issued. It was in response to the American traditional movement. And so the Archbishop of Chicago, he made clear his view on it. and he was, that he wanted, and that document does say, that in due course we all return to the one form of the Mass. And the Archbishop of Chicago has been pretty clear where he's going, and you can be sure that he's given the Institute of Christ the King an ultimatum. Either you sign the document, you do what I tell you, or I ask you to leave my diocese. And that's really where it stands at the moment. There's probably be a bit more dialogue and a bit more discussion. Who knows? But that's what's going on in the background. And this is simply, guys, where it is. So, like, where do I think we should be going at this? Catholicism is far bigger than politics. It's far bigger than any political candidate that will be gone in a couple of years. Don't tie the faith to political movements. As good and as holy as you think you are. I mean, there was Father Altman in the US. I think he's a great priest. I admire his passion, his love, but then when he comes out with a video, a very political video, which Americans might think is great. You might think it's great and it's factually correct and everything like that. The Catholic faith is bigger than American Catholicism. It's bigger than any American movement, and you can't just see it through the lenses of your own culture. There are traditional Catholics outside America, and it's interesting if you see during this the Society of St. Pius X, they don't come out with getting their priests to endorse political candidates and endorse political parties. Because you don't know what could happen in 2, 4, 5 years' time. And then you've tied yourself. Yourself to parties and candidates and so forth and so on and so forth. And again, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. And we need politics. We need good politicians to support our Catholic values and Christian values. But we also need to be prudent, and Taylor Marshall and Vigano have not been prudent. They've not understood that, what's going on. And maybe in 5, 10, 20 years, Taylor Marshall might be the winner and what he's been doing is correct, and Vigano and so forth. It could happen. I'm just saying, if you're asking why the Institute of Christ the King are in the position they're in today in Chicago, it's because of Traditiones Custodes. And why was Traditiones Custodes issued the way it was issued? And was because of Vigano and Taylor Marshall and a few others. American traditionalists. Wasn't because of some traditionalists in France or in any other country. It's American traditional Catholics who have kind of ruined it in a sense for the moment for the rest of us around the world. What Pope Benedict made sense. I mean, most bishops and priests around the world know that Traditiones Custodes doesn't make sense. It doesn't. There was nothing wrong with what Pope Benedict said. If you wanted to do a traditional Latin Mass, the Mass that we've had for ages, for centuries, there's nothing wrong with this. And in my opinion, this is silly season in the Catholic Church. If people want traditional Latin Mass, let them go to it. And most bishops and priests kind of understood this. We don't need this infighting. But, it was, the traditional movement became extremely political in the world's #1 democracy. And you had the president of the world's #1 democracy retweeting Vigano and Taylor Marshall. And, making the traditional movement, an appendix of a political party in a sense. Well, that's how they saw it in Rome anyway. And that's, you got noticed. Taylor Marshall got noticed directly by the Pope. If you're talking about media and media sources and all of this and what the Pope has been talking about in the last, when Taylor's talking about what the Pope was talking about the media, well, Taylor Marshall got directly noticed by Pope Francis. And Pope Francis took action. That's simply it. And again, as I stress, I don't want to be criticizing people. I just think we need to be responsible if we're going to blog about the faith, if we're going to blog about tradition. we have to be careful and responsible that it's not just our view. It's not just, how we see it. Think about the rest of the world, the rest of the Catholic Church. There are traditional movements all over the world, in Mexico, in France, in Germany, in Poland, in Asia, Philippines, Brazil. It's not just America. And there was a blanket, crackdown as such. The traditional movement is bigger than it's bigger than ourselves, and I think we should be showing the beauty of the Mass. And as regards to the Mass of the Ages documentary, because I know people have criticized me for posting on Twitter that the famous quote from Bugnini that we have to remove every stone that separates our brethren. And I just pointed out that in the Mass of the Ages, it was applied as if that quote was applied to the Novus Ordo, when it wasn't. It was given in 1965. The Observatory of Man in Rome has sent me the photocopy of the original article in Italian. And, people have criticized the Mass of the Ages for misquoting Bugnini. And yes, you could say he has been misquoted. Now, you could say his intention is that, but the actual quote, that famous quote, isn't referring to the Novus Ordo Missae, which didn't come into effect until actually 5 years after that quote. It was referring to some interim changes. And again, I would just ask people, when you're trying to defend the Novus Ordo, that second documentary, there you have Taylor Marshall there again. Great guy. I think it's great the work he's doing. But just remember, the faith is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. And I think it's better if we're going to do a documentary on the traditional Latin Mass, instead of focusing on personalities, focus on the issue at hand, which is trying to explain the beauty of the traditional Latin Mass. If we see episode 1, there's a priest in episode 1 who's currently in jail. They had a fundraiser raised for him. He's been charged with, I hope he's innocent. But, in the second episode, we've had an abbot, a prior in a monastery that has gone and got ordained secretly. And, okay, but it's, and those two episodes, all with people who are English speakers. There was nobody from no priests interviewed in France or any of the other countries that have traditional Latin Mass. You could have interviewed them, dubbed them, and brought in a wider understanding of the traditional Latin Mass. It's not just America. Don't just view these problems just from the Anglo-American point of view. There's a far bigger game here. And again, if I'm getting this wrong, I apologize. We have to be humble. But if people are wondering why was Traditiones Custodes issued the way it was issued, and why it was so hard, and why and so forth, it was because of Vigano Taylor Marshall and some others in the American traditional movement who challenged Rome. And if you're going to challenge Rome, you need to be very careful. It's a hard situation. The church is a hierarchy, and you have to work, you have to dialogue, you have to let God work. And sometimes you can't just barge in and expect to win this battle. You have to work the system in a way, and truth will win. The truth will win out. We see the massive fall off in Catholicism in Ireland and elsewhere. And there's many good traditional movements. The Society of St. Pius X, absolutely stellar priests, brilliant communities, very humble, working, not creating waves in the church. And sometimes, having these big waves and these get my voice out. I want getting President Trump to retweet you. Just think about what that will do and how that will get noticed and the reaction you will get. And Taylor got his reaction. Okay, so if you're wondering why the Institute of Christ the King are in the situation they are in Chicago, it's because of Taylor Marshall and Vigano. Simple as. And Vigano, not just, okay, 2008, he issued his letter. I know it was true. I know it for a fact. You issued your letter, and then you went on your course. And I mean, it's hard to follow what Vigano is saying. It's really hard. It's difficult. But we just have to pray. So I just think we just need to be prudent, a bit more careful. I'm guilty of this sometimes. It's hard to bite your tongue sometimes and just saying, look, not now, But that's what my sources have told me. Traditiones Custodes is to stop what has gone on in the American traditional movement. That's simply it. How they will manage that, I don't know. I think it's going to backfire on the Pope. It's just going to cause more sorrow and confusion and in the church. What Pope Benedict did was right. I think personally, from my point of view, the Vetus Ordo, the old order of the Mass, should be put into the Missale Romano and let priests decide what they want to do. If we can have Eucharistic prayers 1, 2, 3, and 4, we can have order of the Mass 1 and 2. We don't need this polemics about liturgy in the church. If people want the Mass, traditional Latin Mass, which I love, let them go to it. We don't need this. But I don't know. Maybe Taylor doesn't understand how Rome works. I presume he doesn't speak Italian, and I'm fluent in Italian. I've lived in Rome. I kind of know what's the lay of the land there, and Rome got very scared, and because Trump was unpredictable, and in reality, the Catholic Church does not tie its fate to political leaders. It's above that. The faith is above politics. It has to be. But and again, apologize if I'm stirring up something here. I don't mean to, but Taylor, I don't buy what you said in your video yesterday. I think you need to take a look at what has gone on, because you're responsible. You're responsible for that document last year. If you thought that President Trump retweeting you was going to be was going to have a great outcome, no, it wasn't. And you've tied priests up in knots after that. And we have to be careful as lay people. We have to work with the church. That's the only way. Reform will only come from the top. The reform that people are looking for. It has to be top down. That's the way the Catholic Church has worked for 2,000 years. And we have to pray. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.